Mac time on a Friday. Been a while since we've had Mac because I guess we've had some vacation time in between there. But a big game coming up. The man never stops. Was even working on the short week. Did a couple of a different NFL game. I believe it was the Jets and Patriots, if memory serves right. But Mac will correct me if I'm wrong. Either way, him and Mike Keith on the call. Titans at the Eagles, a noon kickoff that you can hear on 104.5 The Zone and across the Titans radio network. What's happening, Mac?
Morning, Buck. Yeah, just up there getting ready to go to practice. So getting ready to get on the plane tomorrow and go to Philly and play a ball game.
Indeed, there will be a ball game played. So, Mac, offensively for Philadelphia, I know there's a lot of super talented quarterbacks in the NFL, a lot of great skill position players, but am I wrong in thinking that that's as complete an offense as we could find in the league right now?
Well, let's start with the offensive line. They've got one of the best offensive lines in the league consistently and throughout. And then with this RPO type system, now don't get it twisted. Not every play is an option play, but a big majority of it is. And they've got a special quarterback to run it. There's going to be several different runs that they will run that you haven't seen before. If you go back and watch their games in chronological order, you always see a different type of a run. It's still going to be an option, but they'll pull different people, and depending on who they think their best matchups are, and what they're trying to do, they're trying to get their quarterback both on the pass and on the run. They're trying to get him in the middle of the field because that's where he's most dangerous. Running because he's got two ways to go, and then throwing, he's got big combat catchers, A.J. Brown being one of them, that on those dig routes in the middle of the football field, they can run after catches is big there. So this is assignment football. It goes back to my days of, way back, defending the Oklahoma Sooners and those guys when they were great at running the triple option. Option game is assignment football on defense, and it's very disciplined football on defense. In the National Football League, when you've got a running quarterback by design, you have to +1 your defense at different levels, throughout the game, and you have to change that up. So it's a challenge to play this type of offense. And as you point out, they've got really talented players doing it too. So that's just what it is. They're 10-1, Buck. There's a reason.
Yeah, they're a pretty good football team, turns out. But it seems, Mac, because the running game, the rushing attack is so efficient and is so effective that they really play to the strengths of the quarterback with that passing game because, as you mentioned, there are certain things that he does well, and obviously, as all players do, he has some things that he's not the best at, but the way that they allow him to operate with a level of efficiency that has played him into a legitimate MVP conversation this year, between that and his ability to run, like there are times, Mac, and I was talking to Cosell about this, the idea that he just I wonder if they're just telling him, hey, if you see space in front of you, don't worry about finishing your drop back. Just take off and go, get the yardage, because he seems to do that before he even hits his back foot sometimes.
I don't think they have to tell him that. I think that's just in his DNA.
Yeah.
And so that's all part of it, and it's correct, and it all blends into the fact that the middle of the football field is where he and this offense are very dangerous. Miles Sanders is a really good running back. Coming out of Penn State, he has all the physical ability in the world. He had fumbling problems early in his career, had some of those turnover problems at Penn State. He doesn't have those anymore. He's a legitimate running back too. So, yeah, you've got a quarterback that's rushed for over 600 yards. So, absolutely, even on schedule and off schedule, he's a problem.
157 yards on the ground just against Green Bay for Jalen Hurts, 9.2 yards per carry. Coach Dave McGinnis here, presented as always by Farm Bureau Health Plans. They make so much of the Titans radio stuff possible. They also make the OTP, the Titans Amy and Coach Mac possible, and, of course, Mac's appearances across all four of our shows throughout the course of the week. Defensively, Mac, it looked like they, as the year kind of progressed, or at least in the first half of the year, they looked like they had a little bit of a vulnerability on defense once, as far as rush defense went, without Jordan Davis in the lineup. Obviously, he's a mountain of a man, and his availability I have not yet seen an update on. But they signed Linval Joseph, and they signed Ndamukong Suh, and those guys have gotten a lot of work right out the gate.
Yeah, well, and those two guys are veteran players, and that's, you sign veteran players at this point in the season. You're wanting them to be spot players, but they don't have to have a lot of practice nor indoctrination into what the National Football League is, especially this time of year. Everything they do defensively starts up front, though. It really does. because they are able to. They've got two edge guys, in Graham and Sweat that can give you real problems. You've got to be able to push those guys with your protection, however you decide to protect. You got to be able to push those guys past the quarterback, because if they get level quarterback depth, you got issues, because they're strong rushers, they're speed to power guys. And so, everything they're doing is starting up front, and the pressure that they get, their secondary's having a really, really good year, but they're getting a lot of pressure up front. Most secondaries that have overwhelming years, especially turnover-wise, it can all be traced back to what's happening up front, and especially what's happening up front with 4 men rushing. That's what they've got going on there, Buck.
Coach Mack here with us on 104.5 The Zone. So now with the Titans coming off a game like they just played about a week ago against the Bengals, I think Cincinnati's defense played exceptionally, and I saw the video that you did post-game at some point, Mac, just discussing the idea that they had gotten outplayed, but particularly in the red zone where the Titans' offense has been so good. I think that was the biggest shock to me, to see them blanked that way. Now, I know not every red zone trip is created equal, and there were obviously different circumstances that led to those drives ending the way that they did. But I think that was the thing that I came away with thinking, okay, well, that's not something that happens very often. It'd be tough for another team to try and repeat.
Well, I mean, the Titans are still number 2 in the league in red zone offense.
Right.
But look, every game's its own entity, and in that ball game, that game was the Bengals game, and I'm done talking about it after this, but that Bengals game was a really nip-and-tuck ball game back and forth. But the difference is the Titans moved into red zone territory, did enough offensively to move into red zone territory 3 times, but scored 0 touchdowns. And against an offense like Cincinnati has, especially now with that quarterback and the people that they have, you can't let those chances go by. So, this week is going to be the same thing. Move the ball, get into the red zone, but especially this time of year. We're into December football now, Buck, and when you get a chance to get into the red zone, which they did 3 times against Cincinnati, but came away with no touchdowns, that cannot be the formula for success for you.
Certainly, Treylon Burks and his continued improvement, continued contributions since his return from IR is a part of their formula for success. What have you liked about the way that he's performed, Mac? Because we asked Vrabel about this. I guess this would have been Wednesday, and the response was just a difference in his attitude. Now, I can't speak to that. I don't know how much engagement you get with him beyond the time that we spend around the facility and whatever you're doing with your day-to-day. But whatever it is noticeable in the way that he seems to be consistently able to be relied upon by that quarterback, which is so huge.
Yeah, well, first of all, I'm here, but I don't bother the players.
Right.
Look, I coached for 31 years. I didn't want my players bothered by, any outside elements, and that nobody does either. And they don't need it. They're concentrating on what they're doing. Here's what I see from Treylon Burks. Treylon Burks was making a lot of progress before that toe injury at Indy. I mean, you could see that his development was accelerating at a pretty rapid pace. That set him back a little. He is now, to me, right back on that accelerated pace. He's playing with speed, and plus he's playing with a huge chip and a competitive nature about him. That combat catch he made was tremendous. I mean, he was mad at himself for allowing the guy to miss the block downfield.
Yeah.
But was able to go punch the ball out, but he stayed with the play and fell on it immediately, for the touch. Look, Treylon Burks is as he was advertised. This guy is a big, physical, competitive player that is going to help your offense quite a bit. I'm really, really happy that he is back and starting on his ascent again that he was on before that toe injury at Indy. Now he's back on the same plane, in my opinion.
All right, Mac. There's a big game coming up this weekend, not just the Titans and the Eagles, conference championship weekend. Frogs by how many over K-State? How we feeling?
I don't care. By one's fine with me. Just Frogs. We just need Frogs. K-State and the Frogs, especially, in the last several years have been a real matchup because Kansas State's got good players too, and that K-State has won 3 out of the last 4. Now TCU, the Frogs beat them this year, but they had to come from behind to beat them. So this is going to be, it's all on this game. It's all on this game for TCU because, you win this ball game, well, then you're in the big tournament that everybody fights to get in when they come to training camp in August. They lose this ball game, they're probably going to be out of the tournament. So that's a lot on one ball game. But as I said, the only word I can say right now, Buck, frog.
Frogs. Love to see it. Well, best of luck to the Frogs this week, Mac, and safe travels up to Philadelphia. I will see you in the booth on Sunday, my guy.
See you in the booth, Buck.